The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and welcome to All You Serve's webinar this month. Thank you for joining us. My name is Marcia Diamond, and I am New Business Development with All You Serve, and I'm going to tell you a little bit some logistics why people are coming on. The webinar certificate of participation will be posted a week from Wednesday, so that's the 23rd on the All You Serve website for one continuing education credit. The PowerPoint will be available and the audio. So again, once again, May 23rd, you'll be able to get the webinar certificate of participation for one CEU credit. You'll have to download it and put it on your computer and then print out. You'll be able to get the PowerPoint slideshow, and you'll be able to get the audio. Again, welcome to All You Serve's webinar. My name is Marcia Diamond, and I'm New Business Development. So I wanted to thank you for coming on today, and our presenters, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them before they speak. Our presenters today are Veronica McCullough and Atul Wan. And we did have Jim McGrody, but he ended up having an emergency and won't be able to join us today, but we'll do a updated webinar sometime this summer, and we are pretty sad that he won't be able to join us because of this emergency, but we wish him speedy recovery and health. So today we're going to talk about food is medicine, the power of your thoughts. And we're going to talk about basically spreading the word to encourage and bring back the food as medicine approach. Okay, give me a second. I apologize. We have a technical difficulty, and there we are. Okay. Sorry about that. So today we're going to talk about food as medicine movement, and it has been around for decades, but it is making inroads as physicians and medical institutions are making food part of a formal part of their treatment rather than just solely relying on medications. So in today's world with nutritional changes and educational programs, it's about preventing, limiting, or even reversing diseases by changing what patients eat. So today we're going to share their stories and what they're doing to really move this movement. And so I have to say, food as medicine has been defined by a lot of people very differently, but the purpose or the focus is really to regain a proactive and preventive approach to health and take back the personal health. There's not a one-size-fits-all discipline, and every individual and organization will have a unique way of handling it and proposing it out there. My recommendation to you today is to think about what their approach is that adaptable for you, and put your own personal spin on it? What's the model you want to implement at your organization or during your consultative approach, and how can I do it? So it's here to stay, and where you take it is going to be. So today I hope you walk away with an overall perspective of food as medicine, understand the terminology of this movement, the health and wellness, food pharmacies, and objectives is to get a creation of an action plan of who should be leading it, who should adapt this initiative, and who should execute this initiative. So before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our first speaker. Atul is an executive chef in culinary and nutrition services at St. Peter's University Hospital in New Brunswick, New Jersey. He's a spice expert, a caterer, a restaurateur, chef, runner-up, top, yes, on the Food Channel, Food Network, and he's AHF's National Culinary Contest first place winner, and he focuses on healthier food choices and moderate indulgence. I am very honored and pleased is here today to share his knowledge. Atul?
Marsha, thank you very much for the very generous and magnanimous introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. So let's get running. Food as medicine. So as I was doing some research on this topic, I realized I spoke to a lot of dietitians, my colleagues, people out in the industry, and it was just a reflection of, hey, haven't we been doing this all our lives when we are in healthcare food service, whoever in healthcare food service, and to quite an extent, even in colleges, universities, this is what we do. Food as medicine, dietitian's job. I'm a chef, but as a dietitian's job, what are you doing? You're telling the patient what to eat, what not to eat. What's the goal? To complement the treatment, to prevent the condition, reduce the recurrence of the condition, and probably, if possible, cure the condition. Now, I'm from India, and I'm familiar with Ayurveda. I'm not an expert in it, but we know it. You use some herbs, some spices, some ingredients, and you can try to fix common colds. I mean, we all know that, ginger and lemon, etc. But there are other serious stuff that you can work on. There is not one magical ingredient. There is not enough evidence-based research on the food as medicine piece of it. But as time goes on, there is going to be more evidence-based research going on. We thought about and we talked about, is this food as medicine thing just a social media and a media related, like, big conversation topic that we're having right now that's going to go away as a fad, or is it going to be staying? I personally feel, and I'm sure the panelists today are going to kind of vouch for that, is that it's here to stay. So my personal story started a few months ago when my grandaunt, she has dementia. The dementia is keeping on getting worse. There is no cure for that. So just reading up on different things, I found out that Big Pharma is actually getting out of Alzheimer's and dementia research. And that's significant because if they're not going to invest the money, then we have to invest in ourselves. If I don't trust Oriental or Grandma's Tales or Oriental medicine and those kind of concepts, well then let's start from the basics. The basics is food. So prevention better than cure. And that led me to food as medicine. Finally, to tie all this up, I inherently believe the dietitian is at the core of all of this. And in my hospital, the dietitian is my best friend. Marsha, next slide. So what's my story at St. Peter's? Where did we start focusing or kind of get a shot in the arm to refocus, if I may, on food as medicine concept? It started a few years ago with the introduction of room service. Our press gaining scores were not the best. Leadership was concerned about it. So long story short, they decided to take the initiative, and the culinary team here, we call our department culinary and nutrition. It's not called food service. It's not called dietary. It's called culinary and nutrition. The leadership for that, they decided, let's invest in improving our food service. How did we do that? We introduced room service, and with that, there was an entire menu revamp. And I'm going to talk about a few examples of that in a few minutes. With the menu revamp, involved a recipe re-engineering. In very simple terms, what's a recipe re-engineering? It's tweaking a recipe to make sure it fits your needs. The core focus of that recipe re-engineering was the reduction of using processed foods. Why? I'll come to that in a minute. And finally, in the bigger scheme of things, for the patient, making food flavorful. I call that, let's move to hospital food 2.0, the next level. Next slide. So how did we revamp our menu? What did we do? The idea that the dietitians brought up was we had to try to put all our items in such a way that they were friendly across all diets. Now, as a chef, you're going crazy, like, what do? They told us to focus on 3 key things: low sodium, low fat, high fiber. As I understand, those are the core basics of cancer prevention, or preventative foods for cancer. But That can help as a heart healthy diet, that can help in diabetes, that can help in overall health. Again, just eating one dish is not going to cure you. We all know that. It's going to start, you have to start anytime, and today might be the best time. Our goals for low sodium was each dish has to be less than 300 milligrams of sodium. For low fat was less than 7 grams of fat, and then the fiber was left out. We just had to figure out ways of how to add the fiber. There was no set numerical goal for the fiber. So what we landed up with was 70% of our entrees, 85% of our sides were heart healthy. And I'm using the word heart healthy because we met those goals. 40% of our menu is plant-based, vegetarian. Anything that was carb heavy, you're talking bagels, toast, anything that is in that category has been given a carb count. When we look at the menu itself, if you look at our room service menu, which is pretty intense and extensive, we had to identify through marks, vegan items, vegetarian, kosher. In our Seaboard, we use Seaboard as our computer system. Again, all allergens are put in. Just being ultra careful as to what is communicated to the patient and how we're going to execute that. Finally, every dish, the entire menu, had to be client friendly and approachable. Again, the idea was let the patient, make it simple for the patient to decipher, and hopefully that patient can take these ideas home and execute them at home. So what we did as an example was instead of having a fried chicken breast like a chicken parmesan, we introduced a baked chicken. We call it a panko baked chicken. And what we do is we just take a fresh chicken breast. There's no salt or pepper added to it. We season it with garlic powder, bread it, simply bread it. No milk, no egg, no cornstarch, nothing. Bread it in panko breadcrumbs. The panko breadcrumbs have a little bit of Italian spice to it, and that's our panko breaded chicken. We spray a little pan spray and put it in the oven, and it's baked. As a chef, when I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's pretty bland and flat. When the patients are eating it, I get a lot of positive comments on it. Because the way I tell them to eat it is to add a pinch of lemon juice to it. That just helps accentuate the flavor without adding sodium. Now, those who are on a regular diet and they can add salt, go ahead, add salt, add tomato sauce, add gravy, add whatever you want. So this is how we revamped our menu and then re-engineered the recipe from a chicken parmesan to a panko-based chicken. So in recipe engineering, what we achieved was 75% of our recipes were made heart healthy. We made an effort to make sure that the items that we source from our broadline vendors, from our produce suppliers, from all our vendors, meet those guidelines. All our entrees are made from scratch. Now, this is key. So you go to restaurants, even fast food joints, everybody's talking about scratch cooking. They've been talking about it for years. But why scratch, especially in a hospital? Or why not using processed food? The whole idea is when we are using processed food, 99% of the chances it's going to be high in sodium because sodium is the preservative. And big companies kind of spin up in different ways and different words, and they market it to you. So cleaner label, scratch cooking, whatever word you want to say, homemade, you know what's going on. When a dietitian is watching what I'm cooking, we are not going to use additives and ingredients that should not be in that dish. In our kitchen, in a patient kitchen, there is no salt in the kitchen. There is no butter in the kitchen. Why is there no butter? To prevent cholesterol and saturated fat, to bring about reduction of that. Now, in my catering kitchen, there is butter. I'm not going to deny that, but it's not in the patient kitchen. And finally, when we were implementing all this, we had to make sure that it was financially and operationally feasible. When I say operationally feasible, it involves a lot of training with the cooks, standard recipes, and we keep tweaking those recipes as my raw materials might change. In the next slide, we have some exact examples of what we've done. Mac and cheese, low fat, low milk. Yes, it does not taste like Kraft mac and cheese. I'm going to acknowledge it. But when a guy who just got onto a low sodium, low fat, low carb diet You give him this instead of a regular mac and cheese. You know what? We'll end up getting blessed. Like, hey, God bless you. At least I got mac and cheese. Baked sweet potato wedges. Baking of fried foods is not new to any of us, but this is really a key component of our kitchen, where at our call center, we encourage our call center associates to tell patients, hey, we can bake anything you want. French fries, chicken tenders. We have all that funky stuff too on the menu, but if they want it baked, we'll bake it. We've added brown rice. We've added rice and beans. Again, rice and beans to add a little protein to your carb. We added very extensive amounts of seafood. So we do have swordfish, flounder, tilapia, salmon. In summer, we go to fresh salmon. It's butchered in-house. Snacks. Again, nowadays there are so many healthier snacks available. Low-fat string cheese, hummus cups, carrot sticks. People say, well, I don't feel like eating a plain celery stick. And I say, well, tie it up with a small packet of peanut butter. And this week, we just started doing guacamole cups. For the re-engineering part, I already talked about the baked chicken. Grilled chicken, we introduced grilled chicken, no salt, no nothing. Simple piece of chicken breast, grill marked. When I joined this kitchen, I was wondering how many people would actually order a no salt, no fat added chicken. You won't believe how many people actually do. All our soups, and I take great pride in this, all our soups meet the low fat, low sodium requirement. Obviously, we don't buy any of our soups. Our meatloaf and meatballs, separate recipes, we re-engineered that. This is one of the biggest examples or best examples of re-engineering. So our meatloaf has part beef, part turkey, and part ground vegetables. And when I say vegetables, there's carrots, there's onions, celery, zucchini, squash, and mushrooms. We just chop it up and add it to the mix. And our meatloaf and our meatballs both are bound by oatmeal. We don't use panko or breadcrumbs or anything of that sort. Another piece to our menu and our operation here is the ethnic connection. So we are in Central Jersey, 500-bed hospital. We are known for our maternity. At one time, it was supposedly we had the biggest maternity center in the state, and it continues to be in the top one or two. But very large Hispanic, Asian, and Indian population. So again, to appeal to that demographic, we do have the Tex-Mex dishes. We do have a quesadilla, fajita. We have an Asian stir fry, but we just added an all-vegetarian Indian menu. So I sourced through a local vendor. These are large, nationally renowned vendor who does Indian food. We gave them our restrictions, we gave them our criteria, if I may use that word, and they have come up with about 10 items for us, which I've incorporated into our menu. So I have samosas for breakfast. I have one Indian entree for lunch and one for dinner, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now we spin those Indian entrees in this form. A, they have these spices which are healing, and I'm not talking about heat. I'm not talking about cayenne. The spices listed here, you can see them. Also, they're plant-based, high in flavor. So if you think your turkey sandwich is flat or your grilled chicken has no flavor, you know what? Order a small side of the Indian dish and add it to your meal today. Dip your bread in that if you want to. It's just an extra flavor profile. This also helps with education of people to think outside of just the simple broccoli, carrots, and green beans. Because as I round and as I meet people as a chef, I mean, I feel for patients' challenges that they don't know how to think beyond what they are eating at home or what they see in a restaurant. And when you go to a restaurant and you say, well, can you get me XYZ? Yes, the chef, the team over there will say, well, we didn't use extra butter or extra salt, but you don't know exactly what the truth behind that is. Because in a restaurant, as a restaurant chef, my goal was to make the food tasty. Most unfortunately, a lot of us chefs have to resort to salt and butter to make it tastier. My focus, and the next slide, my focus is on spices and herbs. But before we get into the whole spice and herb story, let me share with you another story that I have over here at St. Peter's is the food pharmacy. See the word pharmacy, F-A-R-M. And we started that about 2.5, 3 years ago. So we got a grant from the state, the district program, and they give us vouchers to give to our clients, which the clients can use at a farmer's market. The farmer's market is with the hospital. These are specifically targeted clients. You come to the farmer's market and you can shop only at that farmer's market. We control the kind of product that is sold at the farmer's market. There is no meat protein sold at the farmer's market. The focus is all fresh foods and fresh vegetables. Again, the philosophy being food can heal. So we use that farmer's market concept with our healthcare team. They go in and they train the people on how to shop, on how to cook certain ingredients. They have cooking classes right after the farmer's market is over, and they also have different things like Zumba and yoga and different classes. The proposal that we are making now, this is not yet implemented, but what's going to happen next is distribution of meals at no cost to target clients and families. So we found out, just as a little tangent, that there's a healthcare system in Pennsylvania that has proven, and they have actually facts, of reduction in readmissions, medication. They've actually done a study and they have shown that there's a reduction in hemoglobin A1C reduction in their clients because these people were given food that met the dietetic restrictions and they didn't have to struggle because they came up with excuses like, oh, I don't have a car to go shopping or I can't afford fresh food, etc. Well, the healthcare system took away all of that. We want to mimic that program, and finally, it should help us reduce our hospital spend. The whole idea of all of this, trying to help people make real, hardcore behavioral change in the way people eat. But just to let you know, and again, in your food service departments, you all know, only one person cannot make this move forward. You need the tie-in from the entire healthcare team and leadership. Fortunately, I'm in a place where the leadership believes in this. Next slide. Marsha, next. Thank you. So the latest initiative that we have in our hospital is an herb menu. As a chef, whenever I go around talking to people, and like I said, facing their struggles, talking to them about recipes, about cooking, about what they don't like about a certain food. And the biggest challenge or biggest category of people that are challenged that I've seen is somebody moving from a regular diet to a low sodium, low fat diet. That's this kind of group of people that struggle the most. Yesterday, and this is real. Yesterday, I'm talking to the guy. Unfortunately, he's getting amputated, and some of his limbs are getting amputated, and he's really struggling hard, almost crying in front of me saying, I'm tired of eating broccoli. And so I had to give him a crash course on kind of exploring different vegetables and how to eat them. And I talked extensively about the use of herbs and lemon. So instead of just talking, this is what we do in our hospital. We empower the patient to improve the palatability of the dish that they may not like. Because like I said, we do not add salt to any of our product that goes to the patients. So I have started an herb menu. The idea is fresh chopped herbs served to the patient as a condiment, just like you would give on the side your sugar and salt and pepper, etc. It goes on the side in a little souffle cup. And why do we do it as a side, as a condiment, is because if I put those fresh chopped herbs on your hot plate is so hot, the herbs visually will not be appealing, they will wilt, and the flavor is lost from fresh herbs after about 15 minutes, especially when it's not incorporated into the dish and just put on top. So what we have done is over here, you can see on the top right, we've added this little group of herbs to our deli station. The tray ticket prints out. It says what herb the patient has asked for, and the deli person chops it up, puts it in the souffle cup, and passes it on to the person assembling the tray. We've started off with simple things: parsley, cilantro, basil. Those three were identified based on our current menu. Another thing we added was lemon wedge. You can add that to almost anything. And like I said, herbs are chopped to order, placed in the souffle cup. You put it on the tray, goes upstairs. When it is delivered to the patient, the person serving the tray makes it a point to mention to the guest or to the patient that here's your fresh herbs. Please add it to your dish right before you start eating. They even offer, in our place, we even offer to the extent, should I add it for you? So they are allowed to lift up the dome, add the herbs, and walk out. A big, very big piece of this whole program has been call center training because we are encouraging people to use herbs. We are encouraging patients to use herbs. So what happens is if you're a patient in our hospital and you order, let's say, the grilled chicken, automatically will pop up a window which will say parsley or basil because that complements more than anything else. And it encourages the call center associate to ask the patient, would you like something like this on the side? The result, fewer leftovers on the patient trays. I get more and more compliments from family, and there's better nutrition. And finally, Marcia, if you slide this down a little bit, nope, just the last line that is missing is I have a better relationship with the dietitians in-house. At this point, I am their best friend because they're just happy that their patients have better improved nutrition and they are eating what we're actually sending to them. So moving on to the next slide. If I want to just tout, which Veronica is going to talk very extensively about in the next few minutes, instead of just talking about food as medicine, let's convert food into is medicine. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing on what you're doing in the initiatives there. Thank you very much. Just a footnote, on the first slide is Atul and Veronica's email address if you have any further questions directly to them, just an FYI. But thank you, Atul. And now I'm excited to hear Dr. Veronica McCullum. And Dr. Veronica McCullum is a registered dietitian, nutritionist, certified dietitian nutritionist, and the director of food and nutrition services at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York. She holds a bachelor's degree in food and nutrition from Brooklyn College, a master's degree in nutrition from Hunter College, and a doctorate in organizational leadership from the University of Maryland, Eastern Shore. She has taught as an adjunct professor at Hunter College and is a past president of the New York chapter of the Association for Healthcare Food Service and the Westchester Rockland Dietetic Association. Veronica has been voted as a trendsetter by the American Society for Healthcare Food Service Administrators and was recognized as one of the 25 most influential Black women in business by the Network Journal. She is a recipient of the Isabel Hallan Award for Excellence in Food Service Management from the New York State Dietetic Association, the Excellence in Management Practice Award from the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, and the Exemplary Leadership Award from the Association of Healthcare Food Service. She is the co-author of chapters in 2 textbooks, and her book, Embrace Your Best Self, Fabulous and Healthy After 50, was just recently published by Advantage Books. Wow, a mouthful. And thank you, Veronica, for sharing your organization and what they're doing in your leadership for this initiative.
Thank you, Marcia. I want to say thank you especially for including me on this panel, but I also want to plug my staff. I want to send out a thank you to all of my clinicians and my culinarians for the wonderful work they do here at Memorial Sloan Kettering to contribute to our mission. So as most of you know, we are one of the world's premier cancer centers, and we actually have over a century of patient care and innovative research, significant contributions to better understand, diagnose, and treat cancer as one of our main goals. We're about 450-bed hospital because, as most of you know, our hospitals are brimming at the seams right now. So we're somewhere in the region of 475 beds. Our tagline, our new tagline, is more science, less fear. And I'm sure you can understand why that's the case because so many of our cancer patients come in extremely fearful, and we do want them to know that we have science as the underpinnings for what we do, but also that we want to make sure that we provide them with a safe environment where they are less fearful. So we are located. Our main campus is on the in the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York, and we have several regional sites and alliances that really allow our patients to have greater access to cancer care now more than any time ever. So when I was thinking about this topic, I was thinking of the many famous food quotes that I know. And one of my favorite is W.C. Fields, who said, he said, I cook with wine, sometimes I even add it to the food. But I think the most profound and probably the most quoted is Hippocrates. Somewhere in 400 BC, he actually said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. I think basically what he was saying was to prevent and treat diseases first and foremost by eating a nutrient-based diet. So when you think about food as medicine, we know that it's been around for decades. Um, Sometime in the 19th century, it fell into obscurity because there was a huge wave of modern drug therapy that took precedence. But as time went by, there were dramatic shifts. And many of you may know that, next slide, please. Many of you may know that by the early 20th century, there was scientific focus on essential elements. They were thinking of vitamins, minerals, and how they could prevent diseases. By the 1970s, we were talking about the links that really demonstrate that overnutrition or undernutrition could be a problem for the general public. And then agencies like the USDA, the Department of Health and Human Services, began to develop guidelines. So here we were faced with dietary goals. We were faced with the Surgeon General's report on nutrition and health. And of course, who can forget the Healthy People 2000 and Healthy People 2010? Um, but the basic premise of all of these were that we should be eating diets that are low in saturated fat and high in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, and legumes to reduce the risk of chronic diseases. Next slide, please. So the shift continued, and scientists began to look at chemicals that were in food, chemicals that were in plant foods, and chemicals that were in animal foods. And again, the premise was that these foods had the potential to reduce the risk of chronic diseases. Then, along those same lines, the birth of functional foods occurred. And, you know, some of you may know or may have remembered that. But the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics defined functional foods as whole foods along with fortified, enriched, or enhanced foods that have a potentially beneficial effect on health when consumed as part of a varied diet on a regular basis at effective levels on significant standards of evidence. Again, and this is really, really based on evidence. And when you think of functional foods, you can think of foods that are conventional, like grains, fruits, vegetables, and nuts, and then think of modified foods such as yogurts or cereals or your orange juices, and then, of course, medical foods such as those that are like enteral feedings, and then the foods for special dietary uses, for example, hypoallergenic foods. So I was thinking about the functional foods. I remember reading that it actually came out of Japan in the 1980s when they were facing escalating healthcare costs. So of course they came up with this idea that they could actually identify foods that could actually focus on specific diseases and help stave some of these diseases off. So of course, again, the same premise, you hear the theme, that the idea is that these foods had the potential positive effect on health. And this is really beyond basic nutrition when you think of these functional foods. But the big question, you know, just going back, was who remembers the birth of nutrigenomics? Again, the whole idea that, the food we eat can influence gene expressions, and then also how these foods contribute to health and longevity or to disease and healthier death. And earlier death. So basically, when you think about what I've been saying so far, is the theme is significant. The goal is to stave off of diseases as well as cure certain diseases. But the question is, why now? Why are we, I just talked about the history of some of these initiatives, but why now? Why are we so interested in food, considering food as medicine? You know, my little cartoon up there says, "Who would ever say I really regret eating healthy today?" I'm not sure anybody would. But anyway, one of the reasons why now and why I can say I was truly interested in getting more information about food as medicine and really employing some efforts to help become part of this movement was there was an article that was written a few years ago, and it really summed up some findings where nutrition scientists with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, they conducted a nationwide survey to determine if hospital cafeterias and restaurants were meeting the needs for low-fat, cholesterol-free foods that help people maintain a healthy weight and prevent heart disease, diabetes, and certain cancers. So, of course, after they conducted the survey, the results were very, very startling. Next slide, please. And basically what they found was that on many days when they looked at these menus in the hospitals, they found that many days at some hospitals, patients and the visitors couldn't find a low-fat, low cholesterol-free entree in the main cafeteria or if they had a restaurant on site. And they also found that fewer than 1/3 of these hospitals that were surveyed offered either a daily salad bar or a daily low-fat vegetarian entree. This is startling. Many entrees described as healthful by hospitals were actually very high in fat. And 62% of the healthiest entrees offerings derived more than 30% of calories from fat. So this is very riveting and very revealing. So there were several coalitions that helped also to ignite my interest. For example, the Healthier Hospitals Coalition, there was Practice Green Health, and there was Healthcare Without Harm. And right here in New York City, there was the New York City Department of Health that mounted a Healthy Hospital Food Initiative, where hospitals could voluntarily sign on to be part of this movement to employ some of their standards. And once we met those standards, we would get rewarded by being mentioned in their press releases. They would send letters to our hospital president or senior leadership, and then we would get a beautiful plaque that we could show off. So in our case, when we signed on, as I said, it was voluntary. What we committed to do was to improve the beverages in our vending machines, the food vending in the machines that we had for vending, and of course our patient meals, particularly regular diets, and of course our cafeteria food. So we embarked on this journey. And one thing I wanted to also mention, as I mentioned, the Healthier Hospitals, they also had similar initiatives, but as you can see, they were pushing and really reinforcing the idea that healthy food is the best medicine. Again, tying it into the title of this presentation. They wanted us to commit to less meat, better meat. And again, the data actually shows that 2 million antibiotic-resistant related illnesses are reported annually. So again, these were just some of the other things that were happening that really made us say, now is the time. Next slide. So indeed, it was a call to action. In 2012, the CDC expert panel issued a statement which really also underscored what we've been talking about. It said hospitals should serve as examples of ideal health-promoting environments by creating a culture of health. And to put it simply, patients or people come to our hospital to get better and not to get sick. Furthermore, next slide. Furthermore, a majority of healthcare organizations, hospitals are increasing as major healthcare organizations or hospitals are increasingly recognizing the importance. Leadership are talking about it, and people are saying, "Oh, I went to this hospital and I noticed they had this program." So people were talking, and so they were serving as models of healthy food environments to patients, not only patients, because a lot of times when we think of hospitals, we're focusing on patients, but also for staff and visitors. And I will also extend this to the community as well. Again, we decided to take the bull by the horn and decided to lead by example. And this effort to create an environment that was supportive of our mission was important. And of course, to augment our credibility in the marketplace. As you heard, initially I talked about us being a very prominent hospital and very prominent in cancer care nationally and worldwide. So we really wanted to underscore our credibility in the marketplace and also to prompt healthy lifestyle practices for people that come to our hospital, and also for them to take these practices back to their families and their communities. So we were fortunate enough that here at MSK, we have a very robust integrative medicine department. And a piece of that really serves its purpose for us in food and nutrition, because among the services that they have is a really, really impressive About Herbs website.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the glitch. I'm sure Marsha is working on fixing it.
Yes, I am. Veronica got disconnected, and I guess she'll be coming right back. Atul, you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah.
In the meantime,
yeah.
Veronica's back.
Go ahead, Atul. Go ahead.
In the meantime, if anybody wants to pose any questions to me.
Well, actually, we have a few. I just wanted to specify that I know Veronica's talking about hospitals, but we're also talking about senior dining as well. So
yes.
To be active and preventive in that component. So I did want to make sure I mentioned that. And the other one, I did want to mention as far as some people had asked some questions, and I guess this is a good time. You mentioned about the herbs menu is a great idea. Are the herbs served separately or mixed together? That was the question, Atul.
You can do either or. Right now, we are just 2 weeks into this program, and I made sure that it is separate. But what I do encourage is, so I give the example of grilled chicken, right? And technically, grilled chicken could go with any herb whatsoever that you can think of. It's something so neutral, it'll take that flavor that's kind of complemented with it. So you could do basil, parsley, and cilantro. If a guest wants all of the three, go for it. Mind you, the idea is to get the patient to complete his meal.
And the other thing, your question was, what other herbs would you recommend?
Rosemary is one. Rosemary is hardy and it'll stay and it has a longer shelf life. That's what I mean by hardy. So it doesn't get spoiled easily. Like cilantro, especially, for example, depending on where you buy it from, it'll last 4 days, 5 days max. Then it starts getting wilted. So you have to be careful. And I guess this question is also tied in a little bit to that. You have to be careful that when your staff is taking the bunch of herbs, putting it on the station, using them, they don't use wilted or spoiled herbs, because you don't want a black, messy, soggy herb going up to your patient. Rosemary, sage, I would not do marjoram. Thyme is another one. In some markets and some regions of the country, you can get lemon thyme. If you have not tried lemon thyme, it's my favorite go-to herb. When I use all these names, just be careful. Your when you choose your herb, rosemary, thyme, the stalk can get very woody. So you have to make sure that you train your staff to remove the leaves or the tops and then chop the herbs. In the case of thyme, I would suggest if you just rip the herb off the stalk, the stem, you may not even have to chop it. But if you chop it, the essential oils really come out. It just adds the real strong, intense flavor. Same thing with rosemary. You don't want to just chop the herb with the stalk on because, again, every cook is different, every prep person is different. You don't want that little woody stem, and then we have issues with the patient, and we almost like undid all the good work that we're doing.
And then the other thing is, I know we said about herbs and spices and while we're waiting for Veronica to call back in. The other thing is I've seen people start to do is fermented and cultural products on their menu. So like a fermented and cultural products added at like he does, the herbs added in for medicine and from the component of for food healing. They're not only adding it for flavor, but it's a food healing component, and that's why they're choosing certain. So what I'm saying is some people have a ferment and cultural products such as yogurt and sauerkraut and adding those components onto a menu.
Absolutely.
You know?
I mean, if you're not doing, when you talk about fermented, the basic fermented, the simplest basic fermented thing, yogurt. Now, we all carry breakfast yogurts, the flavored fruit yogurts, but I would sincerely recommend going for non-fat plain yogurt. All the big yogurt manufacturers make it. You can get that in Greek yogurt form if you want that. You can get that in Irish yogurt form. It's a little pricey. Some markets carry it, some don't. But plain non-fat yogurt, very simple. Again, you can complement that with agave, with honey, nuts. So people then control their sweetener, a natural sweetener. You also control the sweetness. You can also add spices to it. A lot of African, Middle Eastern, those cultures, and Indian cultures, they add almost, we treat it like sour cream. So adding a pinch of salt, you're adding some cumin, you're adding cilantro, you're adding all sorts of different herbs, maybe a dash of lemon, and that's then used as a savory complementing component. The other fermented food that Marsha brought up, you can talk about something like kimchi, even though kimchi is considered extremely high in sodium. So you got to be very careful when you're using things like kimchi or pickled. I mean, technically, a pickled vegetable is partially fermented. You can make your own pickles. Just take some vegetables, blanch it real quick, dump it in a vinegar. Just don't go crazy on the salt and sugar. You can add some spices to it, and there you go. So in the meantime, I'm trying to see if there are any other questions.
Sorry about that. And one last question is, let me get you the one last question. Were you able to stay within food costs for patient day with increased use of these fresh items?
Oh, absolutely. So with the fresh item, we have over the years spent a lot of time on tweaking our menu. Let me just talk about that. When you come into food cost, I don't know how to put it in very simple terms. Food cost is not a quick fix. Labor cost does go up. We have not added labor cost. Let me tell you that. It takes, and it's still till today, it takes a lot of effort to go and stand in the kitchen and tell the cook to do the right thing the right way. Because, and people don't want to talk about this openly, but I am big on, hey, you need to get this job done. This is the recipe. We talked about it. Now, I am willing to do all sorts of training, any conversation, give them all the tools that they want, but get the job done the right way. Fresh food, in the bigger scheme of things, is cheaper than pre-frozen processed foods. There is no question about it.
Thank
Okay,
you,
we're
So,
gonna,
yeah,
Atul.
we'll come back to
Can you
some more
hear me?
questions. Yes, we do. We're gonna come back to more later. Thank you. Sorry.
thank you.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. All right. We can hear you now.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you guys for your patience. Can you go into the next slide, Marcia?
Okay.
Wonderful. So continuing on, um, you could see there are a whole host of herbs and botanicals that we also have on our site that really, again, speak to the purported benefits. For example, pomegranate, which is known for cardiovascular diseases, hypertension, hypercholesterolemia. It's loaded with polyphenols. And then there's the acai berry, which again purported to help with certain cancers, heart disease, diarrhea, stroke. Ginger, well known to everyone, stimulates appetite, relieves indigestion, nausea, vomiting. And mangosteen, which might be new, that's the one in the middle. Many people use it to help manage diarrhea, for wound healing and inflammation. And of course, wheatgrass, which is no stranger to us. Many people make all kinds of concoction with wheatgrass with the purported benefit of immune function, ulcerative colitis, and chronic fatigue syndrome. So Atul talked earlier about their herb menu, and I was fascinated by that. I do want to say that we're right behind you, Atul. We grow our own herbs right here in the middle of New York City, where we have no land. We're growing herbs in an herb cabinet located in our cafeteria. So as you can see, we actually had our in-house designers make our own signs. So it's our cafe herb garden, and you can see how those herbs are flourishing. We have a variety of herbs: parsley, cilantro, basil, dill, and these are all fresh herbs that we can snip off and we can chop up and use in salads or garnishes. And in fact, when it's a great conversation piece when people come to our cafeteria. But again, to underscore the value of fresh and the value, the phytonutrients that are in these herbs are phenomenal. So another thing that we've been really, you know, involved in is employee wellness, and we've created our own employee wellness education materials, which focuses on defining what a healthy diet is. We have a program called FoodWise program where an employee can actually get a healthy meal at a discounted price. Next slide. Next slide, please. So some of the other things that we've actually educated our staff on is what we're doing, because at the end of the day, back to the previous slide. At the end of the day, when people see food in the cafeteria, they're not always sure of what's happening behind the scenes. So we let them know what our chefs are doing, and we let them know what kinds of foods we're buying. And again, why are we doing this? Continuing with the education, we have a nutrition and cancer webpage that really has recipes that are healthful recipes, and patients can actually access those as well. In addition to those healthy recipes, we have tips for symptom management. So on to something that's really hot now. It's juicing and smoothies, and so of course both have their positives and negatives. For example, when we talk about juicing, we say, well, we're discarding the fiber, but for the most part, our smoothies are really very popular. So as you can see, we created this smoothie bar, which actually employees can get smoothies and juices for a lot less than they would in some of your other bigger establishments that sell smoothies and juices. Our #1 seller is the Green Monster. Back to that first slide, that previous slide. if you can, or Green Monster, which it really is a big seller. It leads the pack. It's filled with fiber and antioxidants and other phytonutrients, as you might well imagine. Next slide. If you will remember, I was talking previously about the Healthy Hospital Food Initiative. And one of the things that we did was not only did we make all of our pastries much smaller, but we did a little bit of reorganization where we actually removed any item that would be considered an impulse item from the register if it was not considered a healthy option. So we no longer had pies, cakes, cookies, candies, or anything like that near our checkout lines. Instead, we had an array of fresh fruits, and then, of course, healthy chips that met. They were smaller packages, and they actually met the standards outlined by the DOH. So this picture that you're looking at is a picture of our real patient room service menu, and it's a regular diet. But one of the things I wanted to mention is how we've actually gone ahead and added more healthful options. Next slide, please. By the way, the picture on the go back a little bit, please. The picture on this menu is an actual photo that was taken by one of our MSK employees, and we've used it. With their permission, we've used it as our menu cover for spring. Next slide. So as you can see, health flaw. We added health flaw. As you all know, the cruciferous vegetables have a slew of health benefits, vitamins, fiber, and deciding phytochemicals. Our health flaw is very popular. Next. Wheat berry crunch salad. Again, wheat berry loaded with fiber, folate, protein, iron, vitamin E, magnesium. Again, just trying to add more grain to the menu. And the next one, also more grain, very familiar to all of us, quinoa. Again, high in protein and all of the other nutrients that we know are helpful for us.
So Veronica, I'm gonna, because we have about 5 minutes left, I kind of wanted to go, and I know wanted to get to some of your later slides because I don't, we're getting close, and I know there may be some questions. So people that have the questions, we can send me the questions in and we can send it out. But since we only have about 5 to 10 more minutes, just want to give you a heads up. All right.
Perfect. So we do now use clean meat, better meat, meaning that all of our poultry has no antibiotics or hormones, and or our beef products are grass-fed. And some other initiatives that we've employed that really speak to food as medicine. We have Meatless Mondays. We have the Beyond Burger, which is really not burger, but it tastes like burger. It's a plant-based. As I mentioned, healthy meals discounted. We have a stoplight program, sort of like the stoplight on the street. So if something is not too healthy, we would have a red sticker on it, and this is on our salad bar. Green means eat as much as you want, and amber would be proceed with caution. Maybe it has a little bit more sodium. We have a farmer's market. We have local routes where employees can actually purchase food online, and it's delivered here at the hospital, bagged and labeled, ready to go, and it's all fresh. We have a Good Choice program and a tailored technical assistance program that we partner with the Department of Health to run. And we recently did a study that showed that we had a small percentage of patients that were food insecure. And so we actually have a food pantry now where we can provide food for patients to take home. And of course, we have numerous cooking demos all day long. Our culinary team, they're very, very good at that. So along those lines, aside from all of the health benefits that we're exposing or patients or employees or visitors in the community to, we've won a lot of awards. As you can see, we got the Gold Star from the Department of Health for the Healthy Hospital Food Initiative, and 3 years in a row. This year will be the 4th year that we're also winning the Circle of Excellence Award from Practice Green Health that I mentioned before. In general, we would say, this is without any dietary restriction. We would definitely suggest primarily plant-based foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes, and nuts as the very core of what you you want to employ. There are lots of studies that show that the Mediterranean diet versus a low-fat diet and in a controlled environment does reduce the risk of heart disease and other cardiovascular diseases. So the take home is all foods provide taste, aroma, and nutritive value. So again, there are lots of biases and confounding factors that can help that you may find in studies. But again, the long run is just to look at the basic premise of whatever you're employing to make sure that it has minimal processed foods, it's close to nature, and that it's predominantly plant, decisively associated with health promotion and disease prevention. So what we believe here at Sloan within my department is hospitals can and should deliver important preventive health messages and solutions to patient staff and the communities they should serve. And of course, I know you're going to ask questions about how to get started, so we can actually pause here, Marsha, if people have questions.
Yeah, I think people have been asking where to get started, and I know you wrote getting started funding, and I know Jim, which, as I told you earlier, Jim McGrody had a medical emergency, and so he will do a part 2 sometime in June or July. But he mentioned about funding that there are Blue Cross Blue Shield grants, and I know that we talked about funding, the types of grants that you can get to get these initiatives started. One of the other questions that came out was, you said collaboration with like-minded people. I think, how do you get the stakeholders involved, and how do you get buy-in involved? I would ask both Atul and Veronica, how do you get buy-in?
I didn't wait for too much buy-in. At first, when I started to talk to my staff, there were people who said, well, but people like these chips, or people like these. They sell a lot in the cafeteria. And so I explained to them that at the end of the day, we may lose a few dollars, but let's look at the bigger picture of the greater good, the bigger picture of the larger benefit. It's not just the dollars that we're looking to earn, but also that we're looking to create this healthier food environment. So once I explained it that way, people were on board. I literally did not need to do a lot of lobbying with leadership. They were very supportive. And in fact, once we rolled out several programs, we got lots of positive feedback and accolades. And as you can see, lots of awards to prove it, and lots of good positive feedback from the people that we served.
Okay. Atul, what's your wise wisdom, because I know I'm keeping people past 3, so what would you be your word of wisdom? Let people know a food is medicine approach. I know that some of the things we said is food is a medicine approach. It's a culinary approach to wellness. We have to be able to communicate health benefits of these foods. Non-commercial can be the forefront of promoting health. What's your best words of wisdom? If you had to say, what was your one tidbit that you would give away today to say to get started?
You got to share your passion about this, because we're all in the same business. We're in the healthcare business. We're in dining, and I want to say I've not met one person who's really not passionate about what we do. So in order to share your passion, you've got to walk the talk. Most of us are. You've got to take it to the next level. And that's where, as a culinarian, think outside the box, come up with those ideas that will help you, your staff, your customers, and your patients with better nutrition.
Use food as medicine, spices, culinary, give them options, even on a patient or resident menu, as well as the cafeteria, because we're so used to doing it on a cafeteria, but to do it both on both types. And Veronica, what would you share about, what would be if you take away from food as medicine? You've given so many, but what would be your final food for medicine approach?
I would say just do it. You need to be the leader, and if in your state, or if other people aren't doing it, you get out there and get started. And you can take baby steps, because some of these things may cost a little bit more, let's say for the clean meats or the better meats, but there's so many other things you can do that can really augment this whole idea of food and medicine, and publicize it. Partner with your public affairs department or the communications department. Put it on the website. Create now. You have your electronic menu boards. Put that stuff out there. Have sampling. Have tasting, and don't turn down any requests for a food demonstration, because that's a great opportunity to showcase also healthy options. And if people ask you to do a food demo, pick some of these things to, choose some of these things to demonstrate, healthy foods and medicine, those kinds of things. But just do it.
Excellent. And I think ultimately what I would want to say is, remember, it's from the hearth to the health model. So that means from the oven to your health. So whether it's fresh, not always everything's an oven, but everything from a fresh fruit approach to using foods as much as you can for the science or the evidence-based herbs, spices. Not only does it add flavor, but it definitely adds an ability to be healing. So I think if you go through the slides and reread them, and I know a lot of you, look through the slides again, and I know I've gotten a lot of questions. If you feel you need to be more elaborate, I know that I've gotten a lot of questions here about how to use different in preparation. I put their email addresses in the front. Please feel free to reach out to Atul or Veronica directly on how to get started, grants. And thank you for joining us today. Again, the webinar will be available, the PowerPoint slides, and the certificate of participation on All You Serve's website, who sponsored it, next Wednesday, May 23rd, on their website for you to download. And also, we want to send out well wishes to Jim, who will end up doing a second part of this. And maybe some questions will come out of this that we can ask Atul and Veronica to join us again to add more flavor to this, more flavor for food. But thank you, Veronica and Atul, for sharing this afternoon, and hope you walked away with knowledge on how do you not just have a menu, but options. Thank you again, and thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you.